Hi, and welcome to Reddit Confessions. Tonight's story isn't just about heartbreak. It's about the exact second someone stops seeing you, and the moment you realize you've been gone a long time already. Don't embarrass me tonight. That was the last thing she whispered into my ear before stepping out of the car and into the golden lights of the rooftop party. No kiss, no smile, just a warning. I remember how her heels clicked against the concrete, confident like she owned the night. And I trailed behind her like I was late to something I never agreed to attend. The elevator ride up felt longer than it should have. She didn't look at me once. She was already texting someone, probably her coworkers, telling them we were almost there. I was background noise, +1 with no purpose. When the doors opened, I was hit by laughter, perfume, polished shoes and polished smiles. Everyone looked like they belonged in a movie. I felt like a glitch in the reel. She vanished into the crowd without hesitation. I didn't even get a "you okay?" or "want a drink." She just dissolved into a circle of bodies in blazers and gowns, like she was returning home, and I was just someone who drove her there. I stood by a fake plant near the bar for what felt like an hour. I watched her mingle, not just talk, perform. She laughed louder when that one guy said something. She touched his arm. She leaned in. He leaned back. And I just stood there, wondering if anyone could feel the heat building behind my eyes. I checked my phone. Nothing. I sent her a message. Need anything? No response. 10 minutes later, I left. No drama. No confrontation. I just stepped out. Down the elevator. Into the street. My fingers were shaking, but I didn't know if it was from the cold or from what I felt building in my gut. Then came the message. One word. Come. No name. No punctuation. Just that. And I stared at it for so long I almost missed the next vibration. Another message. Don't make this about you tonight. That was when I realized I didn't leave the party. I had never really been invited. I stood on that corner for at least 3 more minutes, phone in hand, reading her messages over and over. Come. Don't make this about you tonight. And somewhere between insult and command, I convinced myself to walk back into that building. Not because I wanted to. Not because I forgave her for vanishing into that crowd like I didn't matter. No, I went back because that's what I always did. Return when I shouldn't, apologize when I hadn't done anything, hope she'd look at me the way she used to. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and the jazz music from the rooftop trickled down like a memory I wasn't sure I wanted to revisit. I almost turned around. Almost. But then I remembered her voice. That tone. Don't make this about you. And I pushed forward. As I stepped back into the crowd, something felt off. Or maybe I was finally noticing what had always been there. She wasn't looking for me. She didn't seem relieved or even aware I was back. Instead, she was standing near the far side of the terrace, under those glowing string lights, talking to that same guy again. Tall, tan, loud laugh, perfectly tailored suit. He wasn't her coworker. I was sure of it now. There was something in the way he looked at her, like they had their own little language, one I wasn't supposed to understand. And then, he tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear. She didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She smiled. I froze mid-step. Not because it was romantic, it wasn't. It was casual. Familiar. Like they'd done this 100 times when I wasn't looking. I was still standing there, halfway between the bar and the string lights, when she finally noticed me. Her expression didn't change. No surprise. No guilt. She just raised her hand and motioned with 2 fingers. Come here. Like she was summoning a pet. I obeyed. Of course I did. That's what I do. I moved toward her like I hadn't just been erased 15 minutes earlier. When I got close, the man looked at me with that smug, assessing look. The kind that strips you down and dares you to prove you belong. Before I could open my mouth, Delaney said, Elwood, this is Chase. He's on the creative team. We've worked closely for a while. I said hi. Chase didn't. Delaney turned back to him. We were just talking about that cabin in Vermont. You know, the one I told you about? I blinked. What cabin in Vermont? Then it hit me. Last month, I'd shown her a cabin I'd bookmarked online. Told her it'd be nice to escape for a weekend. Just the two of us. She had rolled her eyes and said, "It's cute, but not my thing." Now she was telling Chase about it? He nodded. "We should totally go. You deserve a break after this quarter." We should go. I wasn't sure if my throat closed because of the jealousy or the humiliation. Maybe both. But I knew I couldn't breathe. I tried to catch her eye. She didn't look at me. She was too busy laughing at something he just said. Something about how hot tubs in the woods feel illegal. I stepped back. She didn't notice. I turned away. She didn't follow. I stood by the railing, watching the lights of the city blur as my eyes burned with something I wouldn't call tears, just frustration that had finally liquefied. And then, she texted me again. "Don't mope." 2 words. That's all. I didn't respond. But in my chest, something started to shift. A flicker of defiance, maybe. Or maybe just the first crack in a dam that had been holding too much for too long. I stayed. For now. But the man she brought with her was no longer the man who came back. I don't remember the exact moment I made it to the bathroom. I just remember walking like I was floating, like the floor wasn't really there, like my feet were sinking through something soft and pathetic. People brushed past me, laughing, toasting, clinking glasses, and I kept moving like a ghost no one noticed. I didn't even know what I was looking for until the door closed behind me and I saw myself in the mirror. And I wish I hadn't. The man in that mirror looked exhausted, not just physically, but deep in the bones. My shirt was wrinkled, my collar slightly folded, and my expression. It was this mix of sadness, confusion, and something dangerously close to desperation. My eyes looked like I hadn't slept in days, and maybe I hadn't. Not well, at least. But what got me wasn't how broken I looked. It was how familiar that brokenness felt. Like I'd seen that face before, many times. In every mirror, every dark screen reflection, every passing window late at night. I'd been slowly turning into this version of myself. And I didn't even notice. I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the sink, feeling the chill of the porcelain dig into my palms. The bathroom was silent except for the occasional muffled burst of laughter from outside and the dull thud of music beneath the floorboards. I could still hear her laugh, that high-pitched performance laugh she used when she wanted someone to think she was having the best night of her life. It wasn't mine anymore, that laugh. I took my phone out and opened her last message again. "Don't mope. Not "Are you okay?" Not "Come talk to me." Just that, "Don't mope." Like I was embarrassing her by feeling something. I typed out a reply. I really did. I stared at the blinking cursor. My thumbs hovered. I typed, "Why did you invite me if you didn't want me there?" But I didn't send it. I backspaced. Then I typed, "Do you even see me anymore?" And deleted that too. Then I saw the bathroom door open in the reflection. Someone walked in, a guy about my age, well-dressed, clearly part of the event. He gave me that awkward half-smile people give when they don't know if they should say something or just pretend you're invisible. He chose the latter. I waited for him to disappear into a stall before I took a deep breath, splashed cold water on my face, and stared at myself one more time. I whispered, "What are you still doing here?" I didn't have an answer. And then, my phone buzzed again. New message from Delaney. "You're making this night harder than it needs to be." I blinked. That was her follow-up? Not a check-in. Not a request to talk. Just blame. As if I was the one ruining the perfect picture she was painting for Chase and the others. My heart thudded hard. Not with love, not with pain, but with something colder. A realization. I wasn't a partner to her tonight. I was a liability. And for the first time in years, I wanted to scream. But instead, I wiped my hands dry, straightened my shirt, and walked back out. Not because I knew what I was going to do, but because something had shifted inside me. Something had started to wake up. I didn't go back to her side. I didn't look for her at all. I just watched. And in the next 15 minutes, I saw something that made the crack in my chest split wide open. The party hadn't changed. The lights still glowed too warm. The jazz still floated like expensive perfume. People kept sipping, laughing, boasting, like nothing could possibly be wrong. like I hadn't just stared at a version of myself I barely recognized in the bathroom mirror. I stood by the edge of the room, far enough to be ignored but close enough to watch. I wasn't hiding. Not really. I was just observing, floating, watching her. Delaney hadn't moved much. She was still with him, Chase. That name now had a weight I couldn't unfeel. Every time she tilted her head to the side, every time she reached for her wine, every time she touched her necklace, the one I gave her 2 anniversaries ago that she said was too delicate. He watched her like she was a prize he'd already won. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid, that maybe Chase was just a flirt, that maybe Delaney just liked attention and I was reading too much into it because I was in a mood. But then something happened. Something I wish I could unsee. And worse, unhear. They drifted from the crowd toward the back balcony, a quieter place where fewer people lingered. I followed at a distance, walking slowly, acting casual, pretending I was heading for air or the view or literally any other reason that wasn't her. I stopped near a large decorative column just before the balcony. There were string lights overhead, and the drapes swayed gently from the warm breeze outside. Their voices carried. Not loud, but not careful either. She was speaking first, laughing. That laugh again, like she had no weight in her chest. Then I heard her say, "Honestly, I only brought him so people would stop asking if I'm married." Silence. Then laughter. Then her voice again, this time lower, slower. "You're the only reason I agreed to come tonight. You know that, right?" Chase didn't answer right away. I could hear ice clinking in his glass. Then a deep breath. "So what are we doing, Lainey?" he said. That's what he called her. Lainey. The name she never let me use. Said it sounded childish. "Whatever we want," she whispered. The world slowed. It felt like the entire rooftop shrank to the size of that conversation. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't believe that was my wife talking about me like I was an accessory she dragged out of storage just to keep up appearances. There was no hesitation in her voice. No guilt. No fear of being overheard. Just confidence, that kind of reckless, practiced confidence of someone who's been doing this a while. I wanted to burst out and scream. Confront them. Demand an explanation. Ask her how long. Ask him who he thought he was. But I didn't, because I already knew. I knew if I asked, she'd lie. She always did, with that half-pitying smile and voice coated in reason. So instead, I backed away. Quietly, carefully. I walked toward the far side of the venue, past guests I no longer saw, through a hallway I don't remember stepping into. I opened a door, not knowing what room it led to, and found myself in a private lounge. Dim, empty, a couple of chairs, a mini bar, and silence. I closed the door behind me, and for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't try to make sense of what she meant. I didn't try to defend her in my head. I didn't try to twist her words into something that would hurt less. I just sat down and let it hurt, not because I wanted to feel pain, but because I needed to know I could still feel something at all. I don't know how long I stayed in that lounge. Time didn't feel real in there. The soft yellow light made everything look like it was underwater. My thoughts were slow, fogged up like the mirror in a hot shower, just barely showing reflections I didn't want to see. I sat there, slouched in a leather chair that creaked with every breath I took, staring at the edge of a drink I never poured, running my finger along the rim of an empty glass I didn't remember picking up. Her voice echoed in my head like it was stuck in the walls. "I only brought him so people would stop asking. And you're the only reason I agreed to come." I felt like I'd been replaced. No, not replaced. That would mean I mattered enough to be swapped out. I felt discarded. Like a coat she used to wear in winter but now just keeps in the back of the closet because it's too embarrassing to be seen in. For a few minutes, I actually wondered if I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe I misheard. Maybe I was projecting. Maybe I was just so desperate to feel something that I twisted their conversation into something worse than it was. But I knew better. The way she looked at him. The way she didn't look at me. The way she summoned me with a one-word text like I was some inconvenience she'd forgotten to put away. Suddenly, I heard the door creak. I didn't turn my head. I knew it was her. Her scent reached me before her voice did. the same perfume she used to wear when we went on actual dates. Now I realized she wasn't wearing it for me. "Why are you in here?" she asked, soft but clipped, like she was checking in on a misbehaving child at a family gathering. No warmth, no apology, just irritation laced with forced concern. I stayed quiet. My silence didn't stop her. She walked further in. "You disappeared again," people were asking. I finally turned to look at her. She stood near the doorway, arms crossed, eyebrows pinched. She was still perfect. Dress smooth, lipstick untouched, hair curled like it hadn't moved all night. Nothing about her reflected what I felt. She looked like a woman who hadn't betrayed a thing, like guilt didn't know her name. I said, "Did you think I wouldn't hear you?" Her lips parted slightly, just slightly, enough to register that she knew what I meant. "I heard you talking to Chase," I added. "On the balcony." A long silence stretched between us, dense and suffocating. Her fingers twitched against her arm. "You were eavesdropping?" she asked. That was it. That was her reaction. Not shame, not fear, not even anger, just that cold accusation. I was the intruder now, not the one being emotionally erased. "I was trying to find you," I said. "You were gone. I followed your voice." Another pause. Then she sighed, like this whole thing was exhausting for her. "Elwood, this is not the time or place." "No," I said, "it's the perfect place, because this is where it happened. This is where you let someone else talk about taking you to a cabin I found for us." Her face hardened. "You're being dramatic." I almost laughed. That word again. Dramatic. Whenever I had a feeling she didn't like, it was always that. Like my emotions were a performance. Like I was only allowed to feel if it didn't inconvenience her. "I've spent this entire night standing in corners," I said, my voice low and shaking, "watching my own wife pretend she doesn't know me. I watched you laugh with him like he was the one who built this life with you. I watched you choose him, and then message me like I was a dog that wandered off." Her arms dropped. She stepped closer. "That's not fair." I looked up at her. "What part of it isn't true?" She didn't answer. Instead, she said, "This isn't some big betrayal. We're just close. We work together. He gets me." That stung more than anything. He gets me. Not I love him. Not I want to leave you. Just that he gets me. As if that was the only currency that mattered anymore. And I was bankrupt. "So what am I to you, Delaney?" I asked. "What do I get to be?" She hesitated. And that hesitation told me more than any answer she could have given. She didn't know. Or maybe she did, and it wasn't something I wanted to hear. Then her phone buzzed in her purse. She glanced down, then back at me. "I have to get back," she said quietly. "They're waiting for me to give a short speech." A speech, of course. The public image. The polished version. The one who knew how to smile even when everything behind the teeth was ash. She walked out without another word. And I sat there, not surprised. Just empty. But inside that emptiness, something new began to grow. Not rage, not revenge, just clarity. And I wasn't sure if that scared me more or less. I stayed in that lounge long after she left, long after her heels stopped echoing down the hallway. I sat there like the room would answer a question I didn't even know how to ask. I don't know what I expected her to say. I don't know what part of me was still holding out hope that she'd come back through the door with a change in her eyes, with regret, with fear of losing me. But nothing came except silence. Eventually, the soft clatter of music and conversation in the distance reminded me where I was. A rooftop party where my wife was about to make a speech and pretend everything was perfect. I stood, legs stiff, hands shaking. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look at it. I didn't want another order. Another performance in the shape of a sentence. I wanted the truth. And maybe, in some sick way, I wanted to watch her say it out loud. I needed to know if she could lie to a whole room with the same ease she lied to me. So I walked back toward the party. Each step felt like I was dragging a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. The Elwood who used to believe in us. The one who used to think that being steady and loyal and kind was enough. When I returned, The crowd had gathered in a half-circle. All eyes were on the small platform near the glass railing, where a microphone waited. Champagne flutes were raised. Camera phones were angled. And there she was, standing under the lights in her fitted black dress, looking like the cover of a life I no longer belonged to. I stood near the edge, behind a few taller men who didn't notice me. I didn't care. I didn't want to be seen. I just wanted to listen. She took the mic. "Hi everyone," she said with a laugh that didn't sound like the one I used to hear in bed at night when we whispered about the future. "Thank you all so much for being here. This year has been incredible." A cheer went up. People clapped. Someone whistled. I felt nothing. She continued, "I've had the absolute privilege of working alongside some of the most creative, hardworking, and inspiring people in the industry. I've grown so much professionally and personally, and I owe a lot of that to a few special people." Her eyes scanned the crowd. For a terrifying second, I thought she'd look at me, but she didn't. Of course she didn't. "And especially to Chase," she said, turning toward him with that familiar, warm smile. "Your partnership, your friendship, it's pushed me in ways I didn't expect. You believed in me when I doubted myself. You challenged me when I was too comfortable. You reminded me what I was capable of." More applause. Chase raised his glass. She winked at him. People laughed, light and easy. And I just stood there, skin buzzing, heart slow. I watched as she toasted the man she'd emotionally replaced me with, in front of a crowd that had no idea they were witnessing the soft betrayal of a husband who didn't matter anymore. She didn't mention me once. Not my name. Not our years together. Not the sacrifices I made to keep her supported while she climbed. I was a ghost in the room. A placeholder in her life story that didn't earn a single footnote. Then she ended with, "Here's to the next chapter." I wanted to scream. Instead, I turned and left before the applause ended. I didn't take the elevator. I took the stairs. I needed to feel something. The burn in my legs, the heat rising in my chest, the rush of air as I escaped one floor after another. When I reached the ground, I walked straight outside into the street. The city buzzed around me, cars and lights and strangers laughing about things that had nothing to do with me. I stopped at the corner and stared at nothing, her voice still ringing in my ears. "You reminded me what I was capable of." She was right. I had forgotten what I was capable of too. Until now. I didn't walk toward the car. I didn't message her. I didn't even think about where she was or if she noticed I had left. It wasn't rage that drove me away. It was something colder, emptier. Like a hollow version of myself had taken the wheel and the real me was just watching, detached, from the back seat of my own mind. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. Instead, I kept walking, block after block, past the glittering windows of boutiques I couldn't afford and restaurants where couples held hands over wine glasses they didn't really want to drink. The air was thick with everything I no longer recognized. Even the night sky looked unfamiliar, swallowed by city lights and a silence that pressed on my ribs. After about 15 minutes of wandering, I found myself in front of a diner, the kind that still had chipped tile floors, faded red booths, and a waitress who called everyone Han. I went in without thinking and slid into a booth in the far corner, like I used to do in college when I needed to disappear for a while. I ordered coffee, even though it was late. Maybe I just needed something warm to hold, something real. The waitress placed the mug in front of me, and I thanked her quietly. She smiled like she could see everything I wasn't saying. The exhaustion, the disappointment, the dull ache behind my eyes. I stared out the window, watched headlights smear across the glass. For a long time I just sat there, numb. Then I pulled out my phone. One message from Delaney. "Where are you?" Another, sent 3 minutes later. "People are asking again." And finally, "Are you really doing this tonight?" That was the one that got to me. As if I was the one ruining something. As if my quiet exit was the betrayal, not her months-long erasure of our marriage. I didn't respond. Couldn't. Because the more I sat there, the more I realized something horrible and freeing. I had nowhere to go. Not in the city. Not in that life. not in her arms. So I texted someone I hadn't spoken to in months. Franklin, my older cousin, grew up with me like a brother. He moved 2 towns over after a messy divorce and a nervous breakdown. People called him dramatic. I think he was just honest. He answered in less than a minute. "You good?" I replied, "Not really. Can I come by?" Doors open. That was all I needed. I paid the bill and walked outside. The air had turned colder, the kind that wraps around your neck like a warning. I didn't care. I kept walking until I found a cab, gave the address, and leaned back against the seat. The city blurred past the window, and for the first time in a long time, I let my mind drift without trying to fix anything. I didn't strategize what to say to Delaney. I didn't imagine some perfect confrontation or emotionally devastating speech that would finally make her see me. I didn't picture reconciliation or closure. I pictured nothing, and in that nothing, I found a strange kind of peace. Franklin's place was small, cluttered, and smelled faintly of old takeout. He didn't ask questions when I walked in. He just pointed to the couch and tossed me a blanket like we used to do at sleepovers when we were 12. I collapsed into the cushions and stared at the ceiling. "You hungry?" he asked from the kitchen. "No. You look like death, man." "I feel like less." He didn't push, just sat in the chair across from me and cracked open a soda. After a while I said, "She's gone. I think she's been gone for a while." He nodded slowly. "You mean emotionally or?" I shrugged. "All of it." Silence again. Then he leaned forward and said something that stuck in my chest like a nail. "You don't have to stay in a burning house just because you built it." I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because deep down I knew he was right. And as I closed my eyes that night, trying to sleep on a couch that smelled like bad decisions and beer, I realized something even worse than betrayal. I wasn't mourning the woman I lost. I was mourning the version of myself that stayed for her. Morning sunlight leaked through Franklin's dusty blinds, falling across my face like it was trying to wake up the part of me that had gone numb. My neck ached from the couch. My back felt like someone had rolled me up and left me in the trunk overnight. But still, there was a lightness I hadn't felt in months. For the first time in what felt like years, I didn't wake up with her name tangled in my chest. I sat up slowly, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, and heard the sound of sizzling bacon in the kitchen. Franklin, always up before the world, humming some song with no tune. "You eaten this time?" he called out. "Yeah," I croaked. "I think I am." We didn't talk about her over breakfast. We didn't talk about the party or chase or the way she erased me in front of a crowd. We talked about movies, about dumb high school memories, about nothing. And it was perfect. Around 10:30, there was a knock at the door. Franklin gave me a look. "You expecting anyone?" "No." But I already knew. I stood slowly and crossed the room. Opened the door. There she was. Delaney. Still in the same dress from the night before, though now it was wrinkled and tired like the truth she'd been trying to avoid. Her makeup was smudged just enough to look real. Not like she'd been crying, but like she wanted me to think she had. "Elwood," she said quietly, voice almost a whisper. "Can we talk?" I stood there for a moment, not moving. Then I stepped outside, closing the door gently behind me. She took a breath. "I shouldn't have said those things. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was overwhelmed. And you just..." "Delaney?" I cut in, voice calm, almost too calm. "You were very clear." She looked down, as if the sidewalk might offer a better excuse than she could. I continued, "You knew what you were doing. And maybe, if you had looked me in the eyes when you did it, I'd still be trying to understand. But you didn't." Her eyes welled up. "I didn't mean for this to happen. It's not what it looked like." I smiled softly, not bitter, just done. "I know," I said. "It's what it was." Silence. Then I added, "But I'm not here to fight with you. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just finished." That hit her harder than anything else I could have said. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "I'm going to stay with Franklin for a while. I'll come by next week for my things. You don't have to be there." "Is this really what you want?" she asked, her voice cracking. I nodded. No, I said, but it's what I need. She didn't say another word. She turned, walked down the steps, and got into the Uber that had been idling at the curb. She never looked back, and I didn't expect her to. I stood there a while, letting the breeze wrap around me like a reminder that the world still moved, that I was still here, that sometimes leaving isn't losing, it's finally choosing yourself. Thanks for listening to my story here on Reddit Confessions. Now I want to hear from you. What moment in this story surprised you the most? Have you ever been in a situation where walking away was the bravest thing you ever did? Drop your thoughts in the comments, we read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe to Reddit Confessions for more true stories like this one. Raw, emotional, and real. We'll see you in the next one.